Rebecca, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you are a little north of me up in Idaho. I'm down in Colorado. So how is it?
Yep.
How's the weather in Idaho today?
It's sunny and snowy. I live in a place called Sun Valley, and so
Oh,
yeah, the sun's out, but there's snow on the ground. So it's ski season and fat bike season, and yeah, it's a perfect day.
yeah, amazing. And you love the bike, right? You love the bike. So um
It's my tool right now, but I'm a multi-sport athlete. I started as a runner. I've done a bunch of adventure racing, rock climbing, paddling, and the bike is my most recent tool
oh,
for exploring.
here we go right now. Tell me about your tools. What does that mean, Rebecca? That's a such an interesting concept.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think similar to you in that you used martial arts to, it was your career and your sport for a long time and your job. But you use it in a way to access a different part of yourself. And for me, sport and movement in the outdoors, even since I was a little kid, has always been my tool to explore. And, I've always thought I was exploring externally and seeing the world and going all these places to do races. But more recently, the transition is understanding that I've been exploring on the inside. And so, yeah, my tool for really self-discovery and joy and clarity and happiness is movement in the outdoors, and that's taken different forms. When I was a kid, I would camp in the backyard, and I'd ask my mom, like, can I camp out, and can I go exploring, can I take my bike around, over to my friend's house. And I always wanted to play in the dirt, and we did a lot of camping as kids. And now I can kind of look back and see that theme throughout my life, even with different sports and different activities. It's always been going outside and putting my hands and feet in the dirt and going somewhere that maybe isn't the beaten path. And most recently, that tool is the bicycle, and I do ultra endurance cycling. So multi-day self-supported type of bike rides where I'm navigating, I'm carrying all my own stuff, I'm alone a lot of the time, having sort of a vision quest out there. But ultra endurance is really where my heart is at as an explorer. And I kind of call myself athlete. I've started calling myself an explorer because yes, I'm an athlete and that's my tool, but it's bigger than that. It's bigger than doing a sport for me.
How did you get into the ultra side of things?
I did track I joined the track team. That was my first formal sport in high school. And it's my next door neighbor. She's a couple years older than me. She was a friend of my sister's, and she was on the cross country running team. And I was just talking to her one day. And as a young girl, that age, I think you have kids, your self-esteem isn't that great. You're trying to figure out who you are and, your body image. And my next door neighbor, she said, if you join the cross country running team, you'll never get fat and you get a free tracksuit. And I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, that was it. That was the motivation. And it's kind of crazy. It was those like cotton tracksuits, like with a little hoodie, and they were cool, and I wanted one. And like I said, as a young girl, I didn't want to be fat. I wanted to, and it's the wrong reason to join a sport. But what I found there was a community. I found the strength of my body. I found that I could use my body. It wasn't just how it looked. It was a tool, like I said, to go do cool things. And so early on, if you joined the cross country team, you also had to join the track team. And I wanted to do hurdles and long jump because cross country is hard. Like it's long distance. And at that time we ran 2 miles, which was forever. And,
That's still forever for me,
it's
by the way.
forever. And,
For
but
me, it's still forever. I don't run. I'm 260 pounds, Rebecca. I ain't fucking running 2 miles.
yeah, no kidding. But so yeah, like you're like, I want to do the cool, like the sexy ones. I want to do long jump and
Mhm.
hurdles, but I wasn't any good at that stuff. And so I quickly started to learn that my body was better. The longer it got, the better I did. And so I kind of followed what I think I was meant to be, an endurance athlete for a long time. And yeah, while it's physically and mentally hard, and a lot of people don't like it, I went to college, and then you run 3 miles in college, and it was like, oh man. So yeah, I've always known that I was better the longer it got. And as throughout my career, I would see, the longer races where Leadville Trail 100 is a sort of iconic 100-mile mountain bike race in Colorado. I've won that race 4 times. You race against, men, women, everybody's together in the same category. And it was pretty clear.
So you won that race against men.
Yeah. So,
hell yeah.
I finished top 20 in the men's category.
Okay,
And
got
so yeah, I've won it 4 times as a female, but
Okay.
what you're seeing everyone's pacing, and I've never been in the lead. It's a 100-mile race, and about mile 50 is where I start to turn on the diesel engine, and so you start to see where your skill set is. And so I did start to recognize the longer I went, the stronger I got, or the weaker the competitors got. And I have won ultra endurance events against men. And, my most recent race was a 200-mile or so race in the snow, self-supported. And I finished 5th overall. And yeah, and I'll just full disclosure here, I'm 52 years old, and I'm racing against guys. I'm racing against people 25 years old. And in the ultra endurance space, and in any kind of a technical sport like what you do, there is power in knowledge and experience. And it's not always who is the strongest, has the biggest VO2 max. And it's been really interesting to have this much longevity in my career and still be able to be competitive.
It's interesting when you say what you just said, because it resonates with me, because I went into MMA before I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I won a lot underneath black belt, like all the belts coming up. But I never won anything at black belt. And, I dabbled sometimes, like while I was doing MMA, and I still didn't win. And I was never, ever, ever able to beat champions, even at other, like the best of the best, like some people that were world champions. I was never able to beat them. And then I got old, and I started my own business and had kids, and retired from MMA, and I had this anxiety problem. And then as I was conquering that, as an old man, 36, 37 years old, I started beating some of these champions. I went back into competing, and I was like, what is this? Because I don't train like I used to. I can't physically do what I used to, but there was something about it for me. What is it about it for you as this 52-year-old beating these 25-year-olds? Do you have children as well, or no?
I don't have kids. I have dogs.
Okay.
But like you said, here's what it is. And this is what is really the magic as we age, and hopefully everybody's going to grow to be an old athlete, hopefully we all get to grow old. It's something we don't escape. But I think as you mature, here's the difference is you have the confidence to know what you're able to do. You've been there before. You've got the experience of being knocked down or falling off your bike. You have the experience of messing up and getting up and figuring it out. And, more recently for me, you start to understand that there's more to it than physical prowess, that your mind and your spirit and your energy and is a big part of human performance. And I know you coach people, and, I try to share what I know as well for athletes. I believe everyone's an athlete because we live in a physical body, and we want to move around in this world in the best way we can. So you may not be competing, but I believe we should all treat ourselves as an athlete, because we have a body that we hope will last a really long time and feel good. And so the human performance aspect to it has to include mind, body, spirit, and has to include technique. Like you said, you brought in a whole nother learning and being a continual student. No matter how old you are or what age you are, you're learning all the time. And that really resonates with me. A few years ago, I went into a different aspect of the sport because I needed to scare myself again, and I wanted to keep learning. And I went.
What was that?
That's winter bike expeditions. And I've always been bad in the cold. I've always hated the cold. I have asthma. I have poor circulation in my hands. I'm a real sweaty person. So that's like a death sentence in sub-zero temperatures. And so I signed up and did the training, did the work and the studying to do a race.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sub-zero?
Yeah,
Not just cold, fucking freezing.
freezing. And like went to Alaska and did this race that called the Iditarod Trail Invitational. So it's on the dog sled race. Everyone's probably heard of the
Uh-huh.
traditional dog sled race. So people go do that human powered as well, on bike, on foot, on skis. And so I went to Alaska to scare myself, to really commit, because I hadn't scared myself in a while. And I think like you, I'd sort of lost my mojo and lost my focus. And I had a real pivotal moment about 7 years ago as well. And was kind of like, well, was that it? Was that the highlight of my career? And so I chose to do this Alaska thing, the Iditarod Trail Invitational, to
Can
really
can
see.
I stop you for a sec?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, that pivotal moment. I think these
yeah.
moments in our lives are very interesting, right? To say the least. What was your pivotal moment? What was it like? What
Yeah.
brought it on? What how long did it last? Because I think these moments scare people. They're very like when you have them, they're very scary. At least mine was, you know.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing your story. I've watched your TED Talk and listened to you share your vulnerability and your fear and how you came through that. And just for everyone listening, no matter how strong somebody looks on the outside as an athlete, or like they've got everything together in their life, we all have fears and struggles. We all have the same feelings as humans. And so people will look to me, and I mean, I have the nickname the Queen of Pain, and like she can do anything. She's got it all figured out. And I want to let everyone know that we're all in this process to learn and figure it out. And we're all struggling a bit. And so I appreciate you sharing your story, because it does help people. It does help people move forward. So my pivotal moment was almost to the date 7 years ago. I went and did a
It's
really,
crazy how you remember that, right? Almost to the day. I remember the
yeah,
day. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
I do. Yeah, I started on that journey February 18th, 7 years ago. And so I went to do a ride on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is through Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. It is the trail that during the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese used to move troops, people, ammunition down through the South. It goes through the jungle. It's, this network of crazy hidden trails. And I wanted to go ride my bike there, to find the place where my dad died. He was shot down in the Vietnam War. He was a fighter pilot. And I had some map coordinates and some letters from him. And that had been calling me for a long time in my career to, hey, I wonder what's at these map coordinates. And so I put together a ride, 1,200 miles, to take that journey and go find that spot and see what was there. And so it was a big expedition that I put together, one of the longest rides of my life, one of the most challenging navigation rides of my life, and went to the spot where he died to see what was there. I did a film on that. That's an Emmy award-winning film. It's pretty special. It's called Blood Road. And it's basically a big physical and emotional journey. And people ask me all the time, like, why did you have to ride 1,200 miles to go to that spot? Why didn't you just go there? And for me, as I told you, my physical body is how I access really who I am on the inside. And I needed to strip away all those defense layers as an athlete. We build up being tough and being resilient and being able to do anything. And I had to strip away all those layers physically and be so tired that I could let the emotional come out. And so I was on the trail a month, and it was about,
Are you by
you know,
yourself?
no, I rode with a
A
Vietnamese
guide?
cyclist.
Okay.
No, well, she's an athlete, and I
Okay.
wanted to ride with her to experience the culture with her. She didn't speak great English. We just kind of went on this journey together, but her father also was part of the war. And so I really wanted to connect with the place.
Was he North Vietnamese?
She
She,
was, well, she lived in the South, but yes, her family was from the North.
so they were on the other side of the war.
Yeah, I mean, if there are sides, and I think that's what was really special is riding with her and
Wow.
seeing the experience from her eyes and understanding what my dad was doing, what we were doing. And so it was a really intense ride for obvious reasons,
Yeah.
physical and emotional. And, you know, when I got to the spot where my dad died, it was the first time in my life I felt close to him. And it's because I took that journey, and I really understood after that ride of what forgiveness is about, what athletics are about, the purpose of my riding. And people have always asked me, why do you go do these long things? What is it all for? And I know you talk a lot about purpose, but I understood on that ride that he wanted to show me, you know, this country and this place, and show me that I could use my cycling for a lot more than just my own podiums, my own awards, my own things. And I came back from that trip, you know, and launched a foundation in his name. And one of the biggest discoveries was all of the unexploded ordnance and the bombs that are still left from a war that ended 50 years ago. And it's the bombs are still killing people. And so that to me was just like, wow, you know, I got to see this on my bike. I need to do something about it. So I launched the Be Good Foundation in his name. Be Good is how he signed all of his letters home from the war. And my whole cycling career took on another form. But I'll tell you, post after that ride, the biggest, most important ride of my life, the struggle for me is that I got really lost. I knew from my dad, okay, I can do more with my cycling, but I didn't have a roadmap or a trail map of how to do that. And I didn't really know what was next or how to form it. And I'm only really just now in the last couple of years figuring out what he was telling me and what he was trying to show me. And that's come with, like you, some dark times. If I spent probably 2 years after that ride in a form of depression and not knowing what to do with my life, you know, how to figure this out. I knew he was sending me a message, but you know, we took the film on tour, and then I wasn't riding my bike anymore. I was showing this film, meeting veterans groups, giving, but I had neglected myself. And now I'm coming back around to realize that when we put time and attention into ourselves, that we are better parents, better people, we can share more. And so that was a sort of a down period and a lesson, but learning that it does have to start here in your heart, in yourself, in your own awareness, in your strength, so that then you can share that with other people.
It's so crazy what you said to me offline before, that we were like, you know, brothers from another mother, you know. I don't know what happens when one's a boy and one's a girl, but brother from another mother is what sounds better, right?
Sounds better, yeah.
So everyone says it. But holy shit, you weren't wrong. You know, you weren't
Yeah.
wrong. Like
Well,
this
when
whole
I was hearing your story, I felt that too. Like, and that's where I want to say again to everyone, we're all going through this roller coaster. And is it,
Mhm.
what do you take with the messages and the down times and the really hard struggles? How do you get out of it and rise back to the top of the mountain again?
I,
And
I do the same thing. I mean, down to the give piece, you know, I do the
too
same
much of
thing.
yourself, give
Too
too much.
much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the expectations aren't balanced,
Yeah.
you know, whether it be with people or situations or whatever it is. And it's just not balanced, because I'm saying that I don't need anything back, and then I can just give, and that's all that I need. And that's just not true for me. That's not true for
Yeah.
anyone, right? We all have needs, right? We
Yeah.
all have these human needs. And mine comes a lot, Rebecca, from guilt. You know, I'm guilty of the fortunate life. I feel guilty for the fortunate life that I have.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying I don't work hard, but there's people that work 20 times as hard as me just for a cup of water for their family. And so I feel very guilty about this. I have a lot of guilt. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'll just give, and I don't need anything. And man, that has bitten me in the ass more than once. And I'm really just really realizing that, okay, Elliot, you have to take care of you first here, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's hard for people that, yeah, it's hard for everyone. It's hard for mothers. It's hard, you know, you want to give to the people around you, but ultimately, and I've been there too, you know, you burn yourself out and then you quit, and then you're no good to anyone else. And I know you talked about quitting. I've quit once in my life. in a sporting event, and that still haunts me.
Haunts you.
Yeah.
Haunts you. You never forget it. I don't know if I go a day without thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, maybe if I'm on a beach in Maui, I do. But but very rarely do I go a day without thinking about that moment, because it's the no for an athlete,
Mm.
right? It's the worst thing. It's worse than losing,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And for me, I don't know about what yours was like. I want to hear nobody could see that I quit. Nobody knew.
Mm.
Right. Like for me, when I lost that one particular fight, no one knew. Like I took the beating. Like I didn't just say I quit. I just let them beat me up and went to the hospital afterwards. Right. I still have this flash in my eye from it, 12, 11 years later, whatever. So only Elliot knows. And the only reason the world knows is because I tell it. I tell the story. What was it like
And
for you when you quit?
I'll tell you in 1 second, but I'm just thinking of, like, you took this physical beating
Mm-hmm.
and then you gave yourself the emotional beating
Oh
later.
God. Oh
I
God.
mean, yeah.
I still do, probably.
Yeah.
In some way, right? Like I said, I think about it every day. So we all still do this. This is a
Yeah.
thing we do, right? And you talked about forgiveness, and we'll come back to your quit in a second. But you talked about forgiveness, and I think a lot of forgiveness, if you don't have self-forgiveness, it's very hard to forgive others,
Yeah.
right? And then we put where we're shaming and not forgiving ourselves, we just try to find it in other people, and then we judge them. We go, look, see you too, just to make ourselves feel better a little bit.
Yeah, and I work with a woman who therapy, who she does Ayurvedic practices, and what you just said, she talks about how everyone that we see, they're often a mirror of ourselves, and you may critique somebody, but they're actually a reflection of something you don't like in yourself. And it's sort of like, turn that back on, and hey, am I doing my best? Am I showing up in the right way, instead of that person isn't doing that thing. And what she also says is, the only part of the relationship that you control is yourself. you know you control what you do, how you respond, and that's it. You can't really control what anyone else does. And I think you're like me in that you want to control everything, and you want to make sure everything's set, and it's all going to go this way,
Now
and it
we're
just
different.
doesn't work that
We're
way.
different here. We're different here. I'm not like that at all. I don't.
No.
Stop it. No, never. I've never tried to do that. That's not how this goes.
Most high level athletes really do want to control everything, and letting go of that is actually kind of hard. And knowing that, back to your point, focusing on yourself is kind of the only control that you have, and making sure that you're doing your best. And that language that we use on ourselves, like you talked about forgiveness, and I have a little technique that I use, because we're our worst
Please.
enemy.
Yeah.
We beat ourselves up in our heads every day. You say stuff to yourself you would never say to a stranger or a loved one.
At times, no one can hate me more than me at times. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so what I do, and it's awful. We shouldn't speak to ourselves that way, because one, it's not productive, doesn't help, it makes you feel crappy. And it doesn't make you perform better when you talk down to yourself. So the strategy that I use, if I'm out there on the bike and I'm like, oh, Rebecca, you suck, you can't do this, why don't you should just get a different job, like, what are you even thinking? I pretend like one of my best friends is there riding with me, and I use her name, and what would I say to her? I wouldn't say what I'm saying to myself. I'd say, no, Caroline, you can get off your bike, you can walk through it, let's try it here, I'll show you. Don't worry, like, just get back up off the trail. And so I take it out of a voice to myself and actually speak to someone that I love, and try to use that language on myself. And it's just one of my little tricks. Eventually you insert your own name. Is like, okay, come on, Rebecca, just like get up, keep doing it. And there is actually neuroscience behind the fact, if we use your name and use positive self-talk, even if you don't totally believe it yet, there's science behind the fact that does start to change the story in your head.
Well, it gets into this idea of self, right? And Buddhism talks about this a lot.
Mhm.
What is the self? Are you the one doing? Are you the one thinking? Or are you the observer of the one doing and thinking?
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
there's all these things, right? And if we can be the observer a little more,
Yeah.
uh, and then
Yeah.
and that's what allows that self-talk to happen of, okay, Rebecca, or hey, Elliot, you can do this, because now the observer is talking to the doer, because you have all these different kind of roles and identities of what the self is. And then there's also like this idea of no self, because my skin has shed from when we started this podcast 30 minutes ago. It's not the same skin. It's a little bit of a different skin. So am I the same Elliot that was sitting here 31 minutes ago? So like, there's all these really great ideas in there. And that observer piece where you are now talking to yourself about what you can and can't do. And if you can do that skillfully, man, it's really amazing.
It is, and it's powerful. And what I love right now that's happening is neuroscience is really catching up to a lot of these ancient practices that have been used forever. Breathing techniques, reframing, which is just positive self-talk, or, all of those things. Science is actually proving that these things work. And why that's really exciting for me. I mean, we kind of knew they worked because these practices have been used for 10,000 years, but now more people are willing to try breathing or relaxation or meditation or whatever it is, because they're like, oh, there's science behind it. I know I should really do this now. And it's kind of exciting to see people embracing ancient techniques. And I mean, you're a martial artist, so you've been deep into the mind-body connection in your sport for a long time, but sort of the everyday athlete and human is embracing some of these things. And I think it's really cool.
I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, and I bring this up all the time on the podcast when somebody else talks about the concept of like these ancient techniques. I don't know if you watched.
Jackson was doing it forever.
He
was doing this before it was popular.
He was doing it in the 70s. He was in the 70s doing it. Yes.
Far ahead of his time. And you saw what happened with the Chicago Bulls, and you saw what happened with those teams. If anyone hasn't seen that film, The Last Dance, oh man,
that's what I was going to bring up.
So good.
When they talk about Michael Jordan's greatest gift, that how it wasn't basketball. It wasn't that he could play basketball, and I'm getting chills talking about it. It's that he knew how to stay present in a moment. And that's every religion, that's all it talks about, right? Being one with God and the now and whatever it is. Like, that's all it is. Just you and you and the universe all in one, you and nothing. In that line where he said, why would I think about missing a shot that I haven't even taken yet?
Right.
Like that's so hard. Like, it's so easy, but so hard, because like, you're going to take the shot and there's only two things that can happen. You can make it or you can miss it. Why would you think about missing it?
Right. And God, there's so much there. And I mean, this goes back to why I went to Alaska, why I went to the Iditarod race.
Do it. Talk. Yeah, I want to know, because I wanted to come back to it. Sorry.
Yeah. And that race, it's gnarly. It's self-supported in the Alaskan wilderness in winter.
Can you explain self-supported real fast? That means just you, yourself, and I.
Yep. So I'm riding a fat bike with big wide inch tires. So you can ride it on the snow. And it's basically a hotel on wheels. I'm carrying a minus 40-degree sleeping bag. I'm carrying a stove and fuel. I'm carrying my food. I'm carrying navigational equipment. I'm carrying, extra clothing. You have to, melt snow and to get your water. And so there are a few lodges along the way. You send a couple food drops that are 5 pounds each 3 weeks ahead of time. And that little bag is there waiting for you in the snow at a couple points along the way, but you're self-supported. So
what happens if it goes bad?
Well, you have to, it's frozen. So you have to choose food that is okay frozen.
No, not the food.
Oh, the food, not what happens to the food. Because so you are your own self-rescue. And so you're wearing a satellite tracking device.
Okay.
They can see, the race director can see where you are, but no one is coming to get you. So if you need to rescue, it's self-rescue. And you're totally reliant on yourself. You need to get to the next lodge that might be 50 or 100 miles away, get your own plane out of there. And, so you really are alone, and it's survival.
They say I'm crazy. They say my people are crazy. You're fucking nuts.
It is nuts. It's totally
nuts. What's the matter
nuts.
with you?
It's totally nuts. Well, here's going back to that presence thing.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose to do something that scared me the most which is freezing to death. I don't like being cold. I felt like I needed to go to a place like that to be really present, because in that moment, like that Michael Jordan shot, you either survive or you don't. You either come home with frostbite or you don't. And it's up to you. And so that means the equipment, how your mind is, how your pacing is, making sure you have enough food, make sure you can get water, make sure you can navigate. You are 100% reliant on your own set of skills. And that scared the living shit out of me. And that's why I had to go, so that I was completely present. And I've done that race for 3 years. The first year, I technically won the women's field, but I was a mess. I was a mess, completely unprepared. Couldn't eat any of my food, didn't sleep out, finished just bloated and tearful, and like put myself in danger. So year 2, I went back and I'd studied, I'd learned, I'd practiced with the equipment, I'd sleep outside in the snow and, use my fuel and study the maps, and, came year 2 prepared, and actually stood at the start line so stoked and so confident. I'm like, I'm going to win this overall. I'm going to win the whole thing. I'm going to beat everybody. And half an hour in, I made a navigational error and the race was lost for me. It was a mistake that, cost me 6 hours. But what happened in that moment, I went straight, I should have gone left. And by the time I realized I was sort of not in a great spot, it would have taken longer to go back. And I had a choice. Do I quit? And I'm sitting there crying. Tears are freezing to my face. I'm like, I was going to win this thing. I fucked up. I was so mad at myself, and I had a pity party for a little while. And then it was like getting dark, starting to snow, and I'm alone. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do? And I pushed forward. I pulled my big girl pants back up and basically was walking through the snow up to my knees, pushing my bike, not able to ride it for 6 hours till I could rejoin the part of the course where it was rideable. And the gift of that is, I wanted to quit. I actually am like, I'm 30 minutes from the start. I could just go back and just screw it. This is dumb. I'm not going to win. I'm so far off the back, but I didn't quit. And that quitting moment that I still remember was actually in high school. It was a high school cross country regional championships. We were qualifying for state. I was the best runner on the team. I had been for years. And that day I wasn't. I was like the last one on our team. And the way that they score cross country running, they score the top 5. And I was way back where I shouldn't be. And I walked off the course and just stopped and, basically really jeopardized our team's chance to go to state. And luckily a girl who was like not a strong runner, she had the race of her life and we still qualified. And I remember my coach, my mom, my teammates, they're all come up so concerned, like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I was so embarrassed. I had nothing to tell them. I wasn't injured. There was nothing wrong with me. I just wasn't winning. And so I quit. And that was, I remember the shame that I felt in people that relied on me.
Voice. I can hear it in your voice. Yeah.
Oh, and I was a kid, and I remember it. And I was so shameful. And so, I stood in Alaska that first year going, I'm just going to go back. Screw it. And I was like, no, what would I tell people? What am I going to say if I don't go forward? And like you said, quitting was more painful than just slogging through the snow and getting through. And I didn't win that year, far from it, but it was really a successful journey for me. I finished well. I ended up catching up to my husband and we did the ride together. And so it was this beautiful, our relationship deepened from it. And so the gift in me totally screwing up at the beginning was that, like, I got closer to my husband. And
was he shocked to see you?
He didn't know what was happening. He thought I was ahead of him. Like he thought he was shocked. And so I come that night, like it's middle of the night, I'm moving through the night just with my little headlamp, and I see this little bundle in the snow, and I recognize his bike and his sleeping bag, and he was sleeping. He was taking a nap. And so I drew a big heart in the snow and put a little piece of candy, and then went to the lodge that was up ahead and waited for him. So yeah, and then we did the ride together and ended up being emotional and physical support for each other, and having a really beautiful experience of literally howling with the wolves, the two of us, like in the middle of the night, you hear the Alaskan wolves and see the northern lights. And that was a really special experience. And that came from me not quitting. And if I had turned around there, and I didn't win, but like I totally won, because of that experience with him. And then went back year number 3, and I did win again, and was 6th overall and 5th and 6th overall. And I was the only athlete to do it fully self-supported. So I didn't go into any of the lodges. I boiled all my own snow for water. And so I won that category. And nobody else actually completed it in that way other than myself and my husband. And so back to the original why I went to Alaska and really scared myself was to continue to learn, to continue to be a student, to scare myself so that I would be fully present in a really committing environment. And when people ask, like, why do a race? Why sign up for this thing? Why do something else? It's to make you present and to make you accountable and to see what you're made of. And we often elevate when we put ourselves in scary situations, because we can do more than we believe we can.
Everyone hates fear, but it's so necessary.
It is. And yeah, there's research of like fear is a super powerful neurochemistry, neurochemical motivator. There are things, fear and curiosity are two of the most motivating things that are shown, through neuroscience, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And fear is not a 4-letter word, in my mind. If you think about it, fear and anxiety in your body, they present almost in the same way. Fear and excitement present in your body almost in exactly the same way. And with the chemicals and your heart rate, the only difference is our perception of it. And what do we think is happening? And so I try to stand on start lines. I'm like, I'm excited. Like, I get to do this. I chose to be here. And what is the fear about? Oh, is someone going to go faster than me? In Alaska, the fear is, am I going to survive? And that brings the focus right in of like, okay, I better perform because I want to survive. I need to survive.
It's interesting. I do that exercise with my athletes. I'm like,
Mhm.
Can you tell me what it feels like physically when you're scared?
Yeah.
And then they describe it. And I'm like, okay, can you tell me what it feels like physically when you're really excited? And a lot of times they can't, they don't like, I'm like, what do your legs feel like? What do your hands feel like? What does your stomach feel like? What does your chest feel like? And then I'm like, you see that? They're the same. They present the same, not the same, right? They're definitely not the same, because what's going on in between the two ears is definitely different, But
And
if we can see that they're the same physically, that you can perform when you're excited. So then you also then can perform fearful.
Right. And I love that concept of looking inside yourself and paying attention. Are my hands sweating? Is my heart rate elevated? Like it's called interoception. It's like your perception of what's going on the inside. And athletes tend to be good at it because we are listening to our bodies a lot, but we can all practice a little better of like, what really is happening here? Is it here? Is it in your heart? Is it in your gut? And we have 3 intellectual centers: our brain, our heart, and our gut. We often let the brain take control, and especially in a race or whatever, you have to respond to something, when the gut just does the response. It does the right thing,
Such a good one. As we close here, I always tend to ask these last couple questions to everyone, just because there's no real reason for you to come on the podcast. Well, I shouldn't say real reason. There's no incentive, really. You're not going to get a massive ROI. I know you have a race that you sponsor. You talked about your foundation. You're an author. All of these things that where there are tangible ROIs to. I'm not that person, right? This podcast isn't that. It won't do that for you. I hope you weren't expecting that.
I wasn't. It's not why I showed up.
Yeah. So that's my question: is why show up? Why show up to something that that is almost meaningless?
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that because it's not meaningless. I think sharing our story is one of the most powerful things we can do. Sharing the lessons of what we know and sharing our gift. You know, you talked about feeling guilty because you had privilege or you have things. You have a gift that you can share. I have a gift that I can share that will hopefully help the next person, the next athlete, whoever it is. And it also helps me by actually talking through this stuff. I'm reinforcing what I'm learning. And so the reason to be here and the reason to have these conversations is that I do believe as humans, we have a responsibility to give away what we've learned, to give away what we know. I have
Are
to
you
do
sure?
that.
Are you sure we're not brothers and sisters? Are you sure?
So I have these navigational tools that in that dark period after Blood Road, after, you know, connecting with my dad on a really visceral level, I had to develop some navigational tools because I was lost, like I told you. Sorry, it's my dog barking.
You're good.
And I'm basically how I did this. And I would encourage everyone to do this. If you take this away, you know, every business has a mission statement, value statement. We rarely do it for ourselves. And I had to do that for myself. It's like kind of write a mission statement and like, what is this project of me all about? Version 5.2 of Rebecca. And what I came up with, I just looked back at like all the pivotal moments in my life where things were working and I was happy and stuff was going right. And we all have those, whether you bought a house, you got a job, you had a kid. And I came up with my own navigational tools. And those are, and you're welcome to steal them, but also develop your own. So those are risk equals reward, passion equals payoff, give equals get, and less equals more. And those things, if I check those things off, at least 3 of the 4, I know something's going to be, that's a good path for me. It's like finding a little map. And I call them navigational handrails because in outdoor navigation, there's sort of a term navigational handrails, and it's something like a river or maybe a ridge line that is really obvious. Okay, so you might be bumping around in the middle, like micro navigation. You might be a little lost in the middle, but you've got your handrails on the side that are going to kind of keep you going in the right direction. And that's what those equations are for me of having risk, having passion, giving, and also not doing too much. And then ultimately my dad's words of be good. Whenever I'm lost, I'm like, okay, how can I be good? How can I do that? And so the purpose of this being here, is not necessarily to talk about myself. It's maybe that some of you will take some of those navigational handrails and find a way to navigate your life more gracefully and find a way to, you know, not get lost along the trail out there and give you a machete to maybe whack your way through the jungle a little bit. So that was my why for coming. And also, you know, I really love your story. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to hear more from you.
I would love to talk to you
I
more.
want to take you on a 2-mile run or a long bike ride. Maybe
we'll go for a bike ride. Yeah. I'll talk to you more. We'll exchange numbers afterwards and we can talk. That's fine with me.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been intrigued by jujitsu lately. So that was like, oh, he teaches that. Interesting.
Yeah. That's what I do. Yeah. That's my tool. I call it my vehicle. You know? I call it my vehicle. That's my vehicle. And sometimes I mess it up and sometimes I do it really well. And, you know, I fall and I get back up and, you know, I lose and I win. Yeah, thanks. I know it's not meaningless, you know, but sometimes I just want, the reason I frame it in that way is because I want people to hear that these, what may seem meaningless things really, really actually matter.
Yeah.
You know, somebody said something to me yesterday. He was like, look, every decision matters. It's just practice for the next one. You know, right? You know, like they all matter because like the major ones are so easy. Should I marry this person? Do I want kids? What job do I, right? Okay, sure. Right. Those are so obvious, but it's the little ones that actually make up your life.
Yeah.
You know, it's the little ones when no one's there and there's no real consequence maybe in the moment. that really, really make up your life. And so like this podcast, it's just me and you sitting here talking. I have no clue how many people, I mean, I have an idea of how many people will listen, right? But like, if no one listens, no one listens. It wasn't meaningless because I had a great time, and I
Me
hope you
too.
did too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You talked about it in there a little bit. You talked about your gift. I call that somebody's power. What's your power? What's your gift?
My power is well, my nickname's the Queen of Pain, but I think my power is in perseverance and staying in. And a second power is that I feel like I am a good guide, and I want to be a guide for people if they want to follow along or kind of join on the trail with me. It's yeah, I think
All right,
that those are my powers.
I have two questions surrounding that.
Yeah.
When did you realize it?
Like this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Recently.
Yeah.
Recently.
And this whole idea of being the guide, right? Because I love that as well. How do you deal with you're not for everyone, right? It's a hard thing sometimes when you put yourself out there in the world, and some people go, fuck you, like fuck you and fuck your story. Maybe you did this to me and or blah, 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 right? Or maybe they just don't resonate with you. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a good question. One, I don't listen. I really try to surround myself, and COVID was the pandemic was an interesting practice for all of us to choose the essential people, the essential things in our lives, to shed maybe, we all had to go inside. We really had to go inside of what's important to me. What am I doing with my life? We didn't have all this external noise to make us not listen to ourselves. And so I really, hopefully, I went inside quite a bit the last couple of years of what do I want my career to be like? What do I stand for? And so when you ask me, when did I realize my power? It's really been in the reflection of looking inside and how do I want to shape my business? So if someone doesn't want to come along down the trail with me, I don't care. That's okay. But plenty of people do. And if just my nieces and people in my close sphere are inspired by that, then that's fine. I mean, when I wrote my book, I didn't think anyone would read it. I thought my mom would read it, and that was it.
I feel you. Yeah, I feel you on that one. All right, well, 10 people gonna read this one. Cool.
Totally. But you start to see when you're vulnerable, it does two things. When you share your story, it releases in you. You get a release from it, like, okay, you articulate it, you write it down. And then when you're honest and you speak from the heart, the people that want to come along, they find it and they join in. And the people who don't, I think it's okay. It's back to that. What you control is your reaction to others. And if there's haters or people that don't want to hang out, then that's okay. Because there's plenty who do, for you and for me. There's plenty of people that are affected by our work in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca, thanks for coming on. Tell everyone if they are affected and they did resonate with you, tell them where they can find you, reach out and all that stuff.
Yeah, I would love to connect. RebeccaRusch.com, RUSCH is all of my Instagram and website. And yeah, I have a foundation that uses the bicycle as a vehicle for healing, empowerment, evolution. I have a big event that I put on. I do some online training stuff. I've got a book and really, I would point you to Blood Road, which is the film.
Where can they watch it?
They can watch that on Amazon Prime, Red Bull TV. I think it's on Outside TV as well. And there are links on my website, but you don't have to be a cyclist it's just a story of healing and forgiveness and connectivity. And it's a really human story. So hopefully you can tune into that. And yeah, Elliot, I want to invite you on a bike ride.
Yeah, let's do it sometimes.
I do a nice ride here in Idaho called Rebecca's Private Idaho.
Okay.
It'd be pretty fun.
When do you do it?
That's Labor Day weekend. There's
Okay.
1,500 riders that come, and there's everything from a 20-mile ride to a 3-day stage race. So there's
Okay.
something for everybody.
Maybe I'll do the 20-mile.
Yeah,
Look, I'm not
could
gonna.
do it.
I'm not. Oh, I know I can do it. I'm not gonna lie, Rebecca, because I love my goddamn Peloton.
Yeah.
I love my Peloton.
Awesome.
I haven't rid outside or anything, and I know it's different, but I can ride the hell out of that Peloton.
I bet you can.
Yeah, I can. I'm generally a top 10 percenter on the Peloton. So I'm
I'd
not.
love to get you
Yeah,
outside, the
yeah.
wind in your hair, even though you have no hair, but
I lost it when I was 20, so it's been gone since then. So I'm
yeah,
used to it. So, um,
awesome.
Rebecca, thank you so much. Everyone, as always, Rebecca has her own unique power and gift that she gives to the world, and I have my unique and power and gift that I give to the world. Don't go out in the world and try to be Rebecca, and don't go out in the world and try to be me. Everybody, go out there and please find your own power.